"Fourscore and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth upon this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives, that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. On November 19th, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln delivered remarks which later became known as the Gettysburg Address at the official dedication ceremony for the National Cemetery of Gettysburg in Pennsylvania. On this site of one of the bloodiest and most decisive battles of the Civil War. Though he was not the feature orator that day, Lincoln's brief address would be remembered as one of the most important speeches in American history. In it, he invoked the principles of human equality contained in the Declaration of Independence and connected the sacrifices of the Civil War with the desire for a new birth of freedom, as well as the all-important preservation of the Union created in 1776 and its ideal of self-government. Lincoln's address was a scant 271 words, and probably only took him around 2 minutes to recite in his well-known, ambling but forceful style. By some estimates, as many as 15,000 people were gathered, only to hear Lincoln's meager 271 words? No. On that day, Lincoln was in fact the final act. Another man, Edward Everett, had already given a 2-hour oration called The Battles of Gettysburg. There are few, if any, famous or well-known quotes from Everett's speech. Every school-age child in this country knows 'Fourscore and 7 years ago, and can immediately identify the location and the speaker, but couldn't place "As my eye ranges over the fields, whose sods were so lately moistened by the blood of gallant and loyal men," into the same halls of history. Or how about this quote? "In order that we may comprehend to their full extent our obligations to the martyrs and surviving heroes of the Army of the Potomac, let us contemplate for a few moments the train of events which culminated in the battles of the first days of July." Those few moments began Everett's 90-minute summary of the known facts of the battles of Gettysburg. So who was Edward Everett? The son of a retired minister and local official in Dorchester, Massachusetts. Everett was only 8 when his father died. Thanks to a legacy, he was sent to Phillips Exeter and then Harvard, which he entered at the young age of 13. In his time, he was accounted the brightest student in the history of Harvard College. Graduating first in his class in 1811, he went on to the Divinity School to prepare for the ministry. Not yet 20, he began to preach at Boston's Battle Street Church, then the city's foremost. He quickly gained fame among his parishioners, but found the pulpit intellectually confining. When Harvard offered him a grant to study classical languages in Europe, so he might take up a professorship in Greek language, Everett abruptly resigned his ministry. With a scholarly friend, he left for 4 years of travel and study centered around the University of Göttingen, where in 1870 he received perhaps the first PhD degree ever awarded an American by a German university. In 1822, he married Charlotte Brooks, the daughter of a prosperous Boston financier. Relieved of the need to earn his living, Everett entered politics in 1825, when he was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. He would become successively governor of Massachusetts, U.S. ambassador to Great Britain, Secretary of State, and a U.S. senator. Everett's political career assisted and was assisted by his public role as an orator. He was in an age of gargantuan speeches, 2 hours or more in length, rhetorically grand and flamboyantly delivered. Everett composed his with care, memorized them, and patiently refined and rehearsed the dramatic gestures that went with them. His addresses on the battles of Bunker Hill, Lexington, and Concord were famous. He delivered his celebrated oration on George Washington, modified and updated for more than 5 decades. In the turbulent politics of his time, Everett was a pragmatic Whig, a moderate nationalist who hoped by negotiation and compromise to preserve the constitutional union despite the widening fissure over the future of slavery in the expanding republic. By 1854, when he retired from politics, his party had broken up over abolition, and the nation seemed headed incalculably for dissolution. A course he observed with increasing alarm. But when war began, he didn't hesitate to put his considerable influence as a man of affairs and orator behind the Union cause. Even in his lifetime, some question Everett's grandiose style. More recent critics have ridiculed it. But that day in Pennsylvania, he was seen to have served the embattled nation very well. His speech was accounted a great success, including by Lincoln. Everett himself may have had misgivings, though. Misgivings that do him honor. It is said that mediocrity knows nothing higher than itself, but talent instantly recognizes genius. The day after the ceremony at Gettysburg, Everett wrote to the president, "I should be glad," he said, "if I could flatter myself that I came as near to the central idea of the occasion in 2 hours as you did in 2 minutes."